When I was 8 years old, there was a girl in my class who made it her life's mission to destroy my peace. She stole from me. She lied about me. Her mother even called my house to accuse me of bullying her. But the day she called me a slur she didn't even understand in front of half the class was the day everything changed. Because I used her own cruelty to completely ruin her world. And she never saw it coming, asterisk, before I take you back to those icy hallways of early 2000s Russia, where a little girl learned her first lesson in strategic revenge. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. Here, justice isn't just served, it's served beautifully. Now let's begin, asterisk, I grew up in a small, gray corner of early 2000s Russia. The kind of place where the buildings looked tired, the teachers looked even more tired, and the kids learned to be tougher than they should have ever needed to be. You could smell the cold even when it wasn't winter. The school floors always squeaked, the radiators hissed like they were angry at being overworked, and the fluorescent lights flickered as if they, too, were sick of our faces. I was 8, small, shy, soft-spoken, and painfully aware of the fact that being the youngest in my class made me an easy target. I loved pink things, feathers, sparkles, little fantasy stories. And unfortunately, that made me a magnet for kids who sensed vulnerability the way sharks smelt blood. And then there was her, I won't use her real name, but for the purpose of this story, let's call her Anya. Anya was everything I wasn't, tall for her age, confident in the worst possible way, always wearing clothes that made her look a little older than she was, and always surrounded by kids who laughed at whatever she said, even when it wasn't funny. Especially when it wasn't funny, she had this presence, this force, like she believed she owned the classroom. If she walked in wearing a scarf, suddenly, all the girls wanted scarves. If she said a cartoon was childish, everyone pretended they didn't watch cartoons anymore. She was the kind of girl who decided the social hierarchy without ever being asked to. And, for some reason I never understood, she picked me as her personal nemesis. It started small. Remarks about my height, comments about my clothes, jokes about me being the baby of the class. But as the months went on, the things she did escalated from petty to cruel, one of her earliest offenses, and the one that stuck like a bruise on my childhood memory, was the cape incident. God, that cape! I loved it with my entire little heart. It was pink, soft, and trimmed with fluffy feathers that made me feel like a princess every time I held it. My mom bought it for me from a tiny, overpriced shop because I'd begged her for months. It wasn't fancy or expensive by adult standards, but to an 8-year-old, it was magic. And of course, Anya noticed. One afternoon before a school party, she sauntered over to my desk with that crooked little smirk she wore like a badge of superiority. "Hey," she said, flipping her ponytail like something out of a badly written teen movie. "Can I borrow your cape? Just for today, please?" "I don't have anything to wear." I froze. My heart thumped. I didn't want to say yes, but I also didn't want her to call me a baby in front of everyone. And she always did that when she didn't get her way. So, hesitantly, quietly, I handed it to her. And that was the last time I ever saw it. The next day I asked for it back, and she shrugged, said she didn't have it, said I never gave it to her. When I insisted, nervously, because even then confrontation made my chest squeeze, she loudly told the whole class, "She's lying. Why would I borrow something so silly?" Ugh, it probably wasn't even hers. Everyone laughed. I felt my face burn. I felt the humiliation settle in my stomach like a swallowed stone. That was the day something inside me cracked. The first moment I realized Anya wasn't just annoying. She was dangerous in the way only children with too much confidence and too little empathy can be. But the worst part? Her mother got involved somehow, somewhere in the tangled world of parental gossip. She got hold of my home phone number. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when the phone rang. My mom picking it up, and then both of us freezing as a furious. Shrill voice screamed through the receiver so loudly I could hear it from across the room. "Tell your daughter to stop bothering my Anya. She's smaller, but she acts like a bully. She won't leave my daughter alone." I stared at my mom in horror. My mom stared back, confused. She covered the receiver and whispered, "Do you know what she's talking about?" I remember shaking my head so fast my hair slapped my cheeks. These calls didn't happen just once, not twice, multiple times. Always the same outrage tone, always accusing me, always protecting Anya, who was, in reality, the one tormenting me. It was surreal. Like watching your enemy attack you with weapons you didn't even know they had. Like being blamed for crimes you didn't commit. Like shouting into a void and having the void call your house at dinner time, and the school did nothing. Kids in Russia back then weren't exactly treated like fragile flowers. Bullying was often brushed off as kids being kids, unless things turned violent. Teachers rarely stepped in. So I endured it day after day. I'd walk into that classroom with a knot in my stomach, bracing myself for whatever fresh humiliation she had planned. Whether it was mocking my height, stealing small things off my desk, whispering about me with her friends, or pretending to cry dramatically whenever I walked by so others would stare, she always found a way to make my life difficult. I didn't have the emotional tools. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the confidence to defend myself. But I had something she didn't. I had imagination. I began fantasizing about revenge like other kids fantasized about ponies or imaginary friends. I didn't want to hit her or yell at her. No, that wasn't in my nature. But I wanted something big. Something that would make her wish she'd never decided to pick on me. And the thing about being a quiet, observant child is that you learn to notice patterns, tone, timing, the moments when a single slip of the tongue can shift the entire balance of power. The opportunity came one chilly morning in late autumn. Our classroom smelled faintly of wet boots and chalk, the classic scent cocktail of a Russian elementary school. The windows were fogged over, little handprints smeared across the glass from kids trying to make smiley faces in the condensation. Our teacher was running late, which always turned the classroom into a miniature jungle. Kids were chasing each other between desks. Someone was flipping through a comic book under the table. Another kid kept trying to balance a pencil on his nose. I was sitting quietly near the window, drawing little flowers in the corner of my notebook, and then, like a storm cloud drifting overhead, Anya appeared beside me. She leaned down, too close, her breath warm on my neck. I stiffened. "Hey," she whispered loudly enough for several kids around us to turn. "Are you a lesbian or something?" I froze. The word meant nothing to me at that age. I was 8. I had no idea what she was accusing me of, just that she said it the same way. She said idiot or baby, like it was something dirty, something meant to shame me. A few kids nearby snickered. I felt my face flush, my throat tighten. I didn't understand the word, but I understood the intention. She wanted me to feel small, and I did. But then something shifted. In her eyes I saw arrogance, confidence, the smug belief that she had just found a brand new tool to hurt me with. And in that moment, a new feeling bloomed inside me. Not fear, not sadness, strategy. I replayed her insult in my head. The word felt heavy, forbidden, like something kids shouldn't say, like something adults reacted strongly to, and then I remembered something. A few months earlier, another kid had said a swear word in front of a teacher. That teacher nearly had a meltdown. Bad language was taken seriously, especially adult words children weren't supposed to know. And in Russia, especially in the early 2000s, anything related to non-traditional orientations was viewed like a ticking bomb. If a kid said that to another kid, that wasn't just rude. That was scandalous. As I processed all this little 8-year-old me sitting in a foggy classroom, a quiet, calculated spark ignited in my brain. I didn't know what the word meant, but I understood exactly what it could do. And suddenly, for the first time since the Cape incident, since the phone calls, since all the whispered torments, I felt powerful. My heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from excitement, from clarity. I didn't confront her. I didn't say anything at all. I simply turned the page in my notebook and kept drawing my flowers as if she hadn't just planted the seed of her own downfall. The teacher burst into the room a few minutes later, brushing snowflakes from her coat and mumbling about traffic. The class scrambled to their seats like a herd of startled animals. I sat perfectly still, hands folded neatly, waiting, because I knew what I needed to do. I needed to look innocent, confused, like a child to peer for the dark world of playground slurs. And so, I waited until the teacher was writing something on the chalkboard. Then, I raised my hand. I said in the smallest, most hesitant voice I could muster, "May I ask a question?" She turned, eyebrows raised. "Yes, what? What does lesbian mean?" The room went silent. You could have heard a pencil fall. The teacher stared at me, stared. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again, a whole emotional rainbow in 5 seconds. Kids shifted in their seats, some whispering, others fully frozen. She walked toward me slowly, like I had just detonated an explosive, where she said softly but sharply, "Did you hear that word?" I fidgeted, staring down at my hands, channeling every ounce of little girl innocence inside me. "Anya called me that," I said, in front of everyone, and for the first time in my life. The entire class turned on her. She stiffened in her chair. Her friends stared at her. Even the rowdy boys looked surprised. The teacher's jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles flex. "Anya," she said, her voice icy, "come to the front." Now, the girl who had spent years making me feel small suddenly looked tiny, and as she slowly stood from her desk, her legs trembling slightly, I felt it, the shift, the crack in her power, the beginning of something beautiful, because my revenge, months in the making, had finally begun. And this was just the first domino. When my teacher called Anya to the front of the classroom, the room felt different. The air was heavy, almost humid, charged with the electric thrill only children can produce when they sense that someone else, someone powerful, is about to get in trouble. Anya walked up stiffly, her chin up but her eyes betraying something I had never seen in her before. Uncertainty. It was small, subtle, but it was there. Her confidence cracked like thin ice under a heavy boot. And I watched it. I memorized it. I inhaled it because, for once, she didn't control the room. The teacher stood with arms crossed, her face molded into that perfectly stern, disappointed expression Russian educators seemed born with. "Is this true?" she asked sharply. "Did you use that word toward another student?" For a moment, Anya was silent. Everyone watched her, even the boys who usually couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes. The classroom felt like a courtroom, and the teacher stood as both judge and jury. "It was a joke," Anya finally muttered. "We were just playing." "Playing?" The teacher's voice rose. "Do you think using adult words, dangerous words, to insult a classmate is a game?" Dangerous? There it was. The word that sealed everything. Because in early 2000s Russia, it was considered dangerous. Kids weren't supposed to know terms like that. Teachers feared it. Parents feared it. Society feared it. Suddenly, this wasn't just bullying. It was a scandal. I didn't mean it like that, Anya said quickly, her voice cracking just slightly, and that was a sound I'd never heard from her before. The teacher shook her head. No excuses. You will stay after class. And your mother will be called. A collective breath swept through the room, quiet gasps, whispers, eyes widening. Even I felt my heart kick against my ribs with the realization of what I had just set into motion. This was bigger than I imagined, but that was just the beginning, the teacher continued, and her voice sharpened like a pencil point. I want everyone here to understand something, she said, sweeping her gaze across the room. Words matter. You are children. Children should not use language like this. It is inappropriate. It is harmful. And it will not be tolerated. And then, the moment I didn't see coming, she turned back toward me. Thank you, she said, for coming to me and asking instead of keeping it to yourself. She said it in front of everyone. And my cheeks burned. But this time, it wasn't from humiliation. It was something else. Recognition, validation, power. For the first time since I stepped foot in that classroom, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't a punching bag. And I wasn't the baby anymore. I was the girl the teacher publicly praised. And Anya suddenly became the girl publicly shamed when the bell rang and the class rushed into the hallway. They parted around me like I was carrying something holy and dangerous. No one bumped me. No one mocked me. Not even the boys who usually tugged the ribbons in my hair as a joke. I walked through the corridor slowly, savoring it, but revenge, real revenge, isn't simple. It isn't immediate. It isn't complete after one victory, and in the universe of children, where pride is fragile and perception is currency, the fallout is always messy because while the teacher had chastised Anya, and the class had witnessed her embarrassment, it wasn't the end. It wasn't enough. What happened after class was where the real escalation began. Our school day ended with the usual chaos, kids stacking their notebooks, stuffing wrappers into their backpacks, scrambling to put on puffy jackets that made us all look like little marshmallows. I lingered by the door. I wasn't eavesdropping. Okay, I was absolutely eavesdropping. But in my defense, the teacher didn't close the door all the way. Inside, Anya sat rigidly in a desk at the front. Her hands were clasped on her lap. Her jaw trembled, and she stared at the floor like she could burn a hole through it. The teacher was dialing the school phone, and I silently, invisibly, was watching the first crack in her armor widen. Hello, Mrs. ______. The teacher said, yes, I need you to come to the school. It's about your daughter. Yes, it's urgent. I didn't stay to hear more. I didn't want to push my luck, but something deep, primal, long suppressed flickered inside me as I walked down the hallway. For the first time in my 8 years of life, I felt what true justice felt like. Not punishment, not violence, not cruelty. Balance. But balance never comes without consequences. The shift in the classroom next day. When I stepped into the classroom, the atmosphere had changed. The kids looked at me differently. Some curious, some nervous, some impressed. But there was one person I was desperate to see, and when I found her, sitting quietly at her desk with no entourage around her, I nearly stopped breathing. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red and puffy. Her posture was stiff and closed off, and no one, not a single kid, sat near her. The girl who once commanded social gravity had become a ghost. I took my seat. She took hers, and, for the first time since I met her, she did not look at me. Not once. Not even a glare. It was unsettling, actually. Like watching a wild animal go silent. The quiet before an unknown storm. I expected anger, revenge, a nasty remark, something, but instead, she was quiet. To quiet, and quiet is never harmless. Asterisk, the fear creeps in later that week. Something unexpected began happening. I started to feel uncomfortable. Not because Anya did anything. No, that was the disturbing part. She did nothing. She didn't tease me, didn't whisper to her friends, didn't steal my pencils, didn't push my chair as she walked by. It was like she erased me from her universe. Even children can sense the weight of silence, and hers felt like a storm cloud gathering over my head. Part of me savored it. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For her to stop, for her to be held accountable, for her to know what it felt like to lose control. But another part, a small, trembling part, wondered, had I overdone it? I was 8. I shouldn't have had that question in my head, but I did. What if her mother flipped out? What if she blamed me again? What if the teacher telling her off only made her worse? Children don't forget cruelty. They just change how they deliver it. The whisper network awakened. Skids began whispering. Not about me, about her. I heard her mom yelled at her all night. My mom said her mom had to come to school twice this week. She's grounded for 2 months. Someone said she almost got kicked out. Rumors spread fast. Probably none were true. Maybe some were. But what mattered was she knew people were talking about her, and kids like Anya, they don't survive silence. They need attention like plants need sunlight. The loss of social power crushed her. I could feel her presence in the room like a quiet, suffocating pressure. She avoided everyone, including her own friends, who now drifted to other groups like they were trying to escape a sinking ship. And I watched it all unfold with a complicated mix of triumph and guilt. Guilt? Yes, because I wasn't a mean kid. I wasn't a bully. I was just a small girl who finally stood up for herself in the only way she knew how, but when justice finally tilts in your favor, when the scales start balancing, it can feel like whiplash. I had expected satisfaction, but this, watching her unravel, it was intense, almost overwhelming. And yet, deep down, I knew it wasn't over because as terrified as she looked, I knew that fear turns into anger. Eventually, and anger turns into retaliation. I just didn't know when the unexpected confrontation had happened. About a week later, snow had finally begun to settle on the schoolyard. Thick, powdery piles that kids kept kicking through as they ran around during recess. I was sitting on a low concrete ledge near the fence, eating a small chocolate bar my mom gave me, enjoying the one quiet moment of my day. I didn't see her approach, but I felt her before I heard her. A shadow stretched across the snow in front of me. I looked up. It was Anya. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes were unreadable, blank, almost hollow, like someone had drained the color from them. Finally, she said softly, "You told." My heart skipped, but I forced myself not to flinch. I asked a question. I replied quietly. Her jaw tightened. "Because of you." My mom, she cut herself off, shaking her head. Then she said, "You ruined everything." There it was. The first sign of the old her resurfacing, but something in her voice wasn't normal. Gone was the snarky confidence, replaced by something sharper, something injured. "I didn't mean to make trouble," I said, though even then I knew that wasn't entirely true. "You said something bad." "I didn't know what it was." "You ruined my life," she snapped. Her voice was cracking, breaking. She wasn't angry. She was hurt. She turned as if to walk away, then spun back. "You're so small. And you made everyone hate me." The words hit me harder than I expected. Small. She always came back to that word. I looked down at my boots. watching snowflakes melt on the leather. I felt a mix of guilt and rebellion swirling inside me, but then she leaned closer, too close, and her next words weren't sad, they were venom. I'll get you back, she whispered. And then she walked away. Her boots crunching on the snow sounded like bones breaking. I didn't move for a long time. The spiral children don't have the language for anxiety. They don't know the word for that tightness in their chest. The what-if thoughts spinning in circles. The sudden silence that becomes too loud. For the days that followed, I lived in that quiet fear. Would she attack me again? Would her mom call my house? Would she make up lies to the teacher? Would she steal something? Would she push me? Would she tell other kids to avoid me? Every hallway seemed longer. Every class felt heavier. Every whisper, every giggle behind my back, even unrelated ones, set my nerves on edge. But the strangest part? She didn't do anything. Not directly. Instead, she began to unravel publicly. She cried in class. She argued with teachers. She got in trouble for yelling at another girl. She slammed her desk once so hard the whole class jumped. She came to school late. She forgot her homework. Her grades dropped. Her friends distanced themselves. Her mother, from what the other moms whispered, was furious, confused, overwhelmed, and for the first time, I realized something. I hadn't just knocked down a bully. I had triggered a chain reaction in her life I never intended, and yet, something inside me, something deep, something honest, still whispered, she deserved it. She deserved to feel powerless for once. She deserved to understand the pain she had inflicted on others. She deserved to be held accountable. I didn't want her destroyed. I just wanted her to stop. But the thing about justice is, kids don't know how to dose it. Adults don't either. Justice sometimes spills over the edges. And that's exactly what was happening. A strange calm before the storm. About 2 weeks after the incident, something unexpected happened. Anya stopped coming to school. One day, then 2, then a whole week. The class whispered. Rumors swirled. Our teacher didn't say anything specific, just that she was dealing with some issues at home, and in her absence, my fear transitioned into confusion, then into curiosity, then into something like unease. Had I broken her? Had I done more than I intended? Had things at home gotten worse? My 8-year-old mind tried to piece things together, but I had so little understanding of adult dynamics. All I knew was I had wanted revenge. But this felt like too much until the day she returned, and that was the moment everything changed again. She walked in quietly, her posture different, smaller, like the weight of the world had settled on her shoulders. She didn't look at anyone. Not even her old friends greeted her. She sat down. The teacher gave her a long, careful look, and then, halfway through the morning, the teacher said something that made my blood run cold. At the end of the day, we're going to have a discussion about classroom behavior. Everyone is expected to participate. Discussions like that weren't normal. They only happened when something serious was brewing, and as the hours passed, I felt the air tightening like a balloon about to pop. By the time the final bell rang, I knew something was coming. The teacher closed the door. We all sat up, alert. Even the troublemakers kept quiet. She began talking about bullying, about respect, about harmful language, about the consequences of cruelty. Her words filled the room like smoke. And then she turned her gaze to me. Then to Anya, then to the class. Something happened in this classroom, she said slowly. That should never happen again. And I want us to address it properly. My stomach knotted. Anya's shoulders stiffened. The tension became suffocating. And then the teacher said, I think we need to talk honestly. All of us. My pulse quickened. My hands clenched. this wasn't over. It wasn't even close. Something big was coming, something that would decide everything, and I had no idea what would happen next at the next morning. Ethan woke up with the same heaviness in his chest he had carried for months. But something felt different. Maybe it was the way sunlight spilled through the blinds. Maybe it was the quiet realization that everyone had finally shown him the truth. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sad. He was angry, but not the explosive, loud kind of angry. No. This was quiet anger. Sharp, focused, cold, the kind of anger people feel right before they rebuild themselves and destroy everything that hurt them. Ethan stepped out of bed and said out loud to no one. Enough. For months he played the role of the weak one, the one who forgave, the one who tolerated, the one who swallowed disrespect and called it love. But now he felt awake. Now he wanted justice. Now he wanted revenge. Not illegal, not violent, but smart, strategic, reputation ruining, life-defining revenge, the kind that leaves permanent marks. I need to think like them. He grabbed a notebook, something he hadn't used since college, and wrote a single question. Why did all of this happen? The answer was simple. Because toxic people thrive when the good person stays quiet, because manipulators win when you fear confrontation, because liars succeed when you keep protecting their image, because narcissists dominate when you play the hero. He stared at the page. Sarah, Brian, Rachel, 3. People who all used him differently. 3. People who thought he was harmless. 3 people who believed he would never fight back. He flipped the page. And this time, he wrote a new question. What do they care about the most? He needed to know their weaknesses, not physical ones, but emotional, social, reputation. 1. Sarah, the fraud of a good girl. Weakness, her reputation, her image, her obsession with appearing perfect on social media. Sarah didn't care about truth. She cared about looking innocent. Her whole identity relied on being adored online. One accusation wouldn't break her, but proof, evidence, screenshots, receipts, that would shatter her. 2. Brian, the social climber. Weakness, his job, his status, his desperate need to be seen as successful. He wasn't actually smart. He wasn't actually loyal. He wasn't even good at his work. He thrived entirely on relationships he didn't deserve. Destroying his credibility would collapse everything around him. 3. Rachel, the shadow, who ruined everything. Weakness, her need to feel superior, her need to control narratives, her ego disguised as confidence, expose her lies, and everything she built, her friend group, her influence, her social power would crumble. Ethan wrote a final line on the notebook. Revenge begins when truth finally gets a voice, and he would be that voice, not publicly, not immediately, but strategically. Calculated. Perfect. The first step in his plan. Ethan knew one thing. Anything verbal could be denied. Anything emotional could be twisted. Anything undocumented could be destroyed. So he started collecting everything, every message, every story, I lied text, every screenshot of her talking to Brian, every photo, every timestamp, every contradiction, every detail. Rachel accidentally slipped in every receipt of Brian's fake work trips, every Instagram story. They tried to hide every late night apology, every lie they forgot they told. Built a digital folder, then 2 backups, then a 3rd one. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't confront anyone. He just watched, and the more he observed, the more disgusting the truth became. This wasn't a small cheating situation. It was months of manipulation, a web of coordinated lies, A psychological trap built by three people who genuinely enjoyed watching him break. He realized something important. These people weren't sorry. They were only scared to lose the comfort I gave them. That sentence changed everything. The second step, the bait people like Sarah, Brian, and Rachel all had one shared weakness. They thought they were smarter than everyone else, and Ethan wanted to use that against them. So he played dumb. He acted normal, calm, soft-spoken, forgiving. He even replied to messages with, "Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. You're right. I understand. Let's move past this." They all relaxed. But behind that smile was a strategy. He kept them close enough to slip up again. Close enough to show their real faces. Close enough to incriminate themselves. And they did. They did. Sarah sent a drunk voice note one night admitting she never really loved him. Brian texted Rachel complaining about how Ethan is so easy to fool. Rachel accidentally forwarded a screenshot to the wrong chat. A screenshot of her making fun of Ethan's mental health. He saved everything. The third step, the final trigger he's planned, needed one last thing. A moment where all three would expose themselves in the same frame. A single event that would connect all the threads and life handed him that moment perfectly. Rachel was organizing a friends' reunion dinner the following week. She invited everyone, including Ethan, pretending nothing had ever happened. He accepted the invite instantly. The look on her face was priceless. Not shock. No. Confusion. Why wasn't he hiding? Why wasn't he broken? Why wasn't he begging for answers? Because the prey had stopped running. The night before the dinner, Ethan stood in front of the mirror. He had never looked more confident, and he said something he never believed he would say. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow is when his revenge would begin. Tomorrow is when he would expose them. Tomorrow is when he would burn their reputation slowly, silently, surgically, not illegally, not violently, but socially, emotionally, psychologically. The kind of justice that leaves people questioning their own reflection. He closed the notebook, placed it inside his backpack, and went to sleep with a calmness he hadn't felt in months. Because tomorrow, Sarah, Brian, and Rachel would learn that the quiet guy they betrayed was the one man they should have never underestimated. The night of the reunion dinner arrived like a storm waiting to break. Ethan dressed simply. Not too formal, not too casual, just enough for them to look at him and think, he's normal again. He wanted that. He wanted them relaxed, unaware, unguarded. Because tonight, their masks would finally fall the moment he walked. In Rachel's apartment was loud with laughter. The fake kind, the kind people use when they're trying to hide the rotting things inside. When Ethan stepped through the door, the room fell strangely quiet. Not for long, just long enough for guilt to flicker across their faces. Sarah was the first to speak. "Hey, you made it." Her voice was cheerful, but her eyes weren't. Brian lifted a hand awkwardly. "Yo, man." Long time, Rachel smiled too wide, too forced. "We're glad you could come." For months, Ethan would have crumbled hearing their voices. But tonight, he felt nothing, just clarity, just purpose, just the calm before a controlled demolition. The dinner begins, and so does Ethan's plan. Everyone sat. Small talk began. Fake apologies, empty smiles, scripted sentences. Ethan played along, quiet, observing, letting them feel safe. That's when it began. Small cracks, accidental slips, contradictions. Rachel said one detail. Sarah said a different one. Brian contradicted both. Ethan let them talk, let them dig themselves deeper. He asked gentle questions like, "Oh, I thought you said you were home that night?" Or "Didn't Sarah tell me you were somewhere else?" Nothing aggressive. Nothing loud. Just enough to make their eyes twitch. just enough to make their voices shake. Just enough to make them realize. He knew the first exposure. Sarah, halfway through dinner, Sarah's phone lit up. A notification! A message preview. Ethan saw it. He didn't react. He just said casually, "Oh, look, Brian messaged you." Sarah froze. Brian looked confused. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Ethan smiled. Strange. He's sitting right here. Brian snatched the phone. Sarah tried to hide it. Rachel demanded to see. The preview showed exactly what Ethan knew it would, a saved message from earlier. One Sarah never deleted, from Brian. "I'll tell her soon. Just act innocent for tonight." The room exploded with, "What's that? Why is he texting you this? What does he need to tell her?" Sarah started panicking. "It's old. It's nothing. It's Ethan?" He sat silently, watching her unravel. The second exposure, Brian's Joberkel, still holding the phone, turned to Brian. "What do you need to tell her soon?" Brian stuttered. "It's about work." But Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Oh, right. Work. The promotion you claimed." Brian stiffened. Everyone looked at Ethan. He pulled out his phone calmly. Just one screenshot. One single. Devastating truth. Brian was fired 3 weeks ago and had been lying to everyone. Rachel's jaw dropped. Sarah looked betrayed. The entire table turned hostile. Brian tried to defend himself, stuttering, sweating, shaking. "It's complicated, okay? I didn't want people to judge." Ethan took a sip of water. "Don't worry. We're not judging." The room wasn't breathing. The third exposure, Rachel. No, it was Rachel's turn. The queen of manipulation. The self-appointed leader of the group. The one who started the chain reaction of lies. Ethan waited until she opened her mouth to speak. Then he said softly, "Rachel, want to check your own messages?" Her voice broke. "Which ones?" Ethan slid his phone across the table. She opened it, and there it was, the screenshot she accidentally forwarded. The one where she mocked Ethan's mental health. The one where she encouraged Sarah to keep him around until something better comes. Rachel turned. Pale, silent, everyone at the table watched. Her not as a friend, but as a monster finally exposed. The room. Implied nobody attacked Ethan. Nobody blamed him. Nobody called him. Dramatic. Because all the evidence was right there, staring at them in cold, unforgiving detail. Sarah burst into tears. Brian stood up, kicking the chair by accident. Rachel tried to talk, but words wouldn't come out. Ethan sat back in his chair and asked gently, "Why did you all think I'd never find out?" Silence, real silence, the kind that suffocates. The final blow. Ethan stood up, looked each of them in the eye, not with anger, not with sadness, but with the strength of someone who finally knew his worth. "I didn't come here for apologies," he said. "I came here to return everything you gave me." He placed 3 things on the table. Sarah's lies, Brian's deception, Rachel's manipulation. He didn't yell. He didn't insult. He didn't curse. He simply said, "I'm done being the victim in a story written by cowards." And with that, he walked out, leaving the door open behind him, because the only things that should stay closed are chapters. 2 days later, Sarah posted a long reflection message on Instagram. Nobody believed it. Brian's workplace scandal leaked. He lost the rest of his connections. Rachel's friend group collapsed. People finally saw who she truly was, and Ethan, he didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. All he did was shine a light, and sometimes light is the most brutal form of revenge. The end, the lesson. Ethan healed. He grew, he rebuilt. Not because he hurt them, but because he stopped letting them hurt him, and that's the most powerful revenge of all.